Hey guys, this is Dr. Callahan for week 11, Tuesday for Algebra 2, Semester 2. This is your warm-up. Go ahead and pause the video and answer the following questions. Move forward. Okay, so last class we talked about these two items right here. We talked about like foiling with square roots, and then I also introduced you guys to the letter I, for example. If you have not turned this in yet, you want to make sure you do so as soon as possible because tomorrow's Wednesday and I will be updating your grade. So keep in mind that you get the assignment in class. If you can't finish in class to turn it in, that's okay. You can hold on to it, but you need to turn it in, you know, or else you have like nothing for me to grade for you. I want to go over the ones on the left right here a little bit more because I felt like we kind of like rushed through it a little bit quicker than I would have liked. But I just want to go ahead and go over one of the questions just so in case you haven't been here, you know how to go about doing this. Let's go ahead and take a look at question number 11. So for number 11, I'm just going to rewrite it here. You have 7 minus 4 square root negative 5 minus 1 minus 3 square root negative 5. Keep in mind that square root of a -1 is equal to I because you can't have a negative number in a square root. So we just kind of like put it as an imaginary number just to make it work. And that's totally fine. Since I have a negative right here, I have 7 minus 4 square root of negative 5. Distribute that negative into the second parenthesis. You have a -1 and a positive 3 square root negative 5. Once you have it like this, you can go ahead and combine my terms. So 7 minus 1 is a 6. And then you can also combine the -4 square root negative 5 with a 3 square root negative 5 because they have the same square root. So -4 plus 3 is going to give you a -1 square root negative 5. Once you're at this point, you have to do a little bit of crazy math to kind of like simplify it. So you have 6 minus 1. You are going to split that. If you were to split that, you'll get a -1 and a positive 5. Do you guys see that? Didn't we say that -1 is equal to I? So really what this is it's just a I square root 5. So you just gotta rewrite it like that. So then if you simplify it one more time, 6 minus I square root 5 is gonna be your answer. And so that actually matches M. And so for number 11, your answer is M. Okay. All right. So that's what we did last class. Does anybody need a copy of this from last class? If you need a copy, I'm just going to put it right over here. You can grab it at your own pace and watch the video from week 11 Monday so you know how to do this. Okay. All right, so week 11, I've already given you guys your Math Excel. It's open to you guys. Week 10's Math Excel was due by last Sunday at 11 p.m. So if you were to go ahead and redo it, there's a slight penalty for how late it's gonna be, but at least it's better than, you know, like 50%. Even if it's late, you still can get up to like 90%. You know, there's just a slight penalty with it. All right, so everything that we've done, I've updated your videos on the YouTube channel. And so if you guys take a look over here, you guys now have 48 videos and everything that we went over from yesterday. So week 10 Friday is on there. Week 11 Monday is up here as well. So if you take a look at it, it's already there. Every single video that we've had when I've seen you guys for the last 48 class days is on there. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so today is Tuesday. We're going to start graphing radical functions. Yesterday was a review. I didn't feel like we're quite ready yet because we just came back from 2 weeks off. So today we'll start graphing functions. And if you look at the calendar here, we're going to do graphing functions tomorrow as well. And then after that, we're going to move on to solving radical equations. We'll do that until April. And then we're going to end the section with function operations for 4 days, and then after that, inverse relation functions will be the last topic of discussion, and we'll be done with this unit by April 15th. You'll turn that packet in. I'll give you a brand new one for the next unit, okay? So today you're gonna need your guided note packet, and also you're gonna need a TI-84, a Sharpie, a poster board, and a ruler. So come on up, guys. Grab your calculator. I'm gonna give you guys your poster board on, let's do blue today. That sounds good. So take a poster board, it's blue right here, and then rulers and Sharpies. I'm just gonna put this right here. Come on up, there are 4 things you need to grab: Sharpies, rulers, and poster, and your TI-84. So come on. Okay, so let's start off with the very first. What is a domain and what is a range? So you guys have heard these terms before. Domain are basically all possible X values, and range are just basically all possible Y values. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys about the domain and range after you graph a radical function, and then you're gonna tell me what the domain and what the range is. I'll start off with those 4 questions. You guys are allowed to use your calculator on the test. So obviously you can graph it using a chart, or you can graph it using your calculator. Either one is totally fine by me. But then the thing is, a lot of our kids are like, oh, I could use a calculator on the final exam, and that's great. But if you don't know how to graph it because you don't know where the buttons are, having a calculator really doesn't do you any good. So that's why in this class, I make sure that we use calculators so you can see where the buttons are and you know how to use them. And especially if you're planning on going to after this class, because you have some choices. You have Algebra 3, Prop Stats next year, or if you want to really challenge yourself, you can go into Pre-Calculus, Trig. Pre-Calculus and Trig eventually leads to AP Calculus, which is a college level class. And if you're planning on going into like business, finance, math, science, engineering, maybe med school, anything that's related to math and science, that's the route that you want to go into. Algebra 3 is you're barely clinging on to graduating high school. It's not intended for college going students because they don't recognize Algebra 3 as a lot of the questions, the math questions there, doesn't really apply to college. And then another alternative that's really good is if you're not kind of unsure of where you want to go, Prop and Stats is another one. Prop and Stats is a good one because it is more challenging than Algebra 3, but it's not as difficult as Pre-Calculus. So those are the 3 options of where you guys are going next year for your classes, for your senior year. All right. So let's take a look at the first one here. So you have your equation, which is y is equal to the square root of x. And so if I plug in a 0, square root of 0 is just going to give me a 0. So that's my first answer, is 0, 0. So put a dot right there. Then you have square root of 1. Square root of 1 is just 1. So 1, 1. Square root of 4 is going to give you a 2. So my third dot is at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 at 2. 1, 2. There you go. And then at 9, your square root of 9 is going to be a 3, which is going to be like all the way over here somewhere. So then if you take your pen and you just go ahead and draw your graph, the graph of a square root of x looks like that weird little curve, okay? So it just looks like this, just connect your dots. It's not a straight line, it's like a curve, okay? And then with your calculators, if you're like, if I didn't want to use a chart and I just wanted to graph it, how would that look like? I'm gonna show you guys how to do that as well. So turn on your calculators. And on your calculators, do you see on the upper left-hand side where it says y equal? You wanna click on that. If you have an equation in there, you want to clear it. The clear button is right here. So you just want to clear that. So clear right there. And then you just type in square root. So we're going to type in second, x squared to get that square root button. And once you have the square root button, you just type in x, which is right there. And then graph, which is this button right here. So I'm just going to type that button. And if you look at your graph, my graph, the window's a little bit off. So I'm going to change my window I usually just go to Windows and standard. Another way, like if your window's really off, you just go to zoom right here, and then you go down to where it says standard, which is number 6. Standard just means it's 10, 10, 10, 10, like 10 on top, 10 down, 10 left, 10 right, and you hit enter. And then do you see how it just like reset your window so it's not crazy like? And then if you look at the graph, that's exactly what you have, is that weird looking little curve, okay? So the next thing you want to do is you want to ask yourself, okay, what is your domain and what is your range? Well, if I take a look at my graph right here, let's start with domain. Domains are axis. Do you see how your graph starts at x equals 0 and then doesn't go to the left, but it keeps going to the right? And you're like, does it ever stop going to the right? And you can use your little cursor and keep going and click it to the right side and see how far does it go? It's going to continue on forever and ever on the right. So then your domain is going to start at 0 with a bracket and then positive infinity. Another way of writing that is you can also just do x is greater or equal to 0. So it's saying all the positive numbers starting at 0. So either one works. Now with your range is y, it's like top and bottom. So then looking at the range, does anything ever go down below, like to the negative y? It doesn't. Where does it start? It starts at 0. But then it keeps on getting higher and higher on top. So it's just 0, comma, positive infinity. Or if you rewrite it, y is greater or equal to 0. And that's your domain and range. All right, let's go on to the second example. Second example, notice you have a 2 in the front, so it's going to be a little bit different. Square root of 0 is 0. 0 times 2 is still 0. So your first point is at 0, 0. Square root of 1 is still 1. 1 times 2 is going to give you a 2. So your second point is at 1, 2. Square root of 4 is a 2. 2 times 2 is a 4. So at 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the very last one, I mean, like you can put in 3. Square root of 3 is square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And that one's gonna be like all the way over here somewhere. You can't see it. It's all the way in the back. So that if I draw my line and connect it, this is kind of where my graph looks like. Does your domain and range change? It doesn't. Your domain is still from 0 to positive infinity, and your range is still from 0 to positive infinity. It doesn't change. It's the same route, same direction. Okay, let's go on to number 3, you guys. Okay, so now this one is gonna be a little bit interesting because now instead of a square root, you have a cube right here. Does everybody see the 3 right there? It's gonna be a little bit weird, but there's a 3. Okay, it's a cube root. So with that one, I'm like, all right, I might have to use my calculator for that one because this is gonna be a little bit odd. So when x is -8, what is a cube root of -8? I don't know about you. You can think about like, you know, how to multiply this. I mean, think about it, it's like a -2 times a -2 times a -2, right? And they both give me -8. Are there 3 of the same kind? There are. So then when you take that number out, it's just -2. So at -8, which I don't even have enough space here, this is a really bad graph, you go down to -2. So I'm gonna go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's gonna be like down here somewhere. Sorry, it's a little off. I apologize. But that's okay, because that's why you have your calculator. And I don't know about you, but I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this like just in my head. You can use a calculator, so why not use a calculator? You know what I mean? So then what you can do is go to y equals. And then to find the cube, you got to do a little bit of weird thing. You see where it says math right here on the left side? Click on math, and then you go down to number 4. Do you see where it says cube root? And then hit enter. And there you go. You have a cube root now. Now you type in the letter X and then hit graph. And that is your graph for a cube root. If you look at it, it's kind of like a weird snake shape, S, right? So it kind of looks like it goes from here, whoops, like that. And that is what your graph looks like. So then you're like, okay, but what about my chart, Callahan? How do I fill out this chart? Because I still need to do that. So the great thing about the TI-84 calculator, rather than using your brain, your calculator is going to do most of the work for you. But you need to know where the buttons are. So if X equals negative at 1, what is Y? So what you're going to do is hit second, the second button right there. And then you're going to hit trace. The trace button's on top. So second trace. And do you see where it says values right there? Number 1. You hit enter on that. And then what you see is have X equals and it's blinking at you. So what it's telling you to do is give me a number for X and then hit enter. I'll tell you what Y is. Like for our first one, remember how we put -8? So let's try that one. So your negative button is on the bottom, not the minus. There's a difference between minus and negative. Hit enter. And what number does it spit out at you? -2. And that's exactly what we did. Now let's fill out the rest of the chart. Second, trace. Then go to values again, type in -1. And what does that give you? Type in 0. And what does that give you? Type in 1. And what does that give you? And then type in 8 and hit enter, and it gives you all the values. So you should have a -1, 0, 1, and 2. Good morning. So now that I filled out my chart, I have my graph, let's find the domain. Remember your domain are all the possible X values. So look at your graph. How far is your graph going over to the right? It keeps going, right? It's all the way to positive bazillion. How far is your graph going to the left? Does it ever stop going to the left? No, negative bazillion. So your answer is negative infinity to positive infinity. Or another way of writing this is all real numbers. That's another possibility of an answer that your test will have. So it's all the possible values. Next is your range. Your range is a little bit weird, okay? So if you look at your range, you ask yourself, how far up am I going and how far below is my graph going? And if I look at my graph, I don't know how far it goes past 2 because it looks like it doesn't go past 2, but then I'm not sure. So that's why you have your calculator, okay? So what you can do is you can go, okay, so far if I keep on moving my cursor to my graph, it looks like, I mean, it's at furthest it goes is up to like 1 for Y value. But then I want to know, like, what if I just keep going, like, you know, over to -100 and then also to +100 for the X value. Oh, it does look like it does go further down and it will go further up, but I still don't know, like, where the Y is, like when X is at, I don't know, like 200. So let's go to second trace or second, yeah, trace. And you can put in like, when X is at 200, Y is invalid, which means it does taper out somewhere. So let's try that again, second trace. So let's say, what if X is at 100? Y is at 4.64. So what if I try, what if it is at 150 for X? Y is now invalid. So I know it has to be less than 150. So I'm just gonna make some guesses. Let's try maybe 125. Where is my y gonna be? It's invalid. So it's less than 125. And it's just like a little puzzle. You just have to keep trying. Let's try 115. It's invalid. Okay, so it has to be less than 115. So then second trace, let's try 105 maybe. It's invalid. Okay, so then let's just go to the table. If I go to the table, it's another way that I can do is you can go down and take a look to see what the numbers are at. So I'm thinking if I do 102, okay, so it doesn't go past 100. So then if I look at this, it looks like it's tapering off. It's not going to go any further than 5. Do you guys see that? Like if I keep on going over, do you see how it gets a 4.9? Oh, it does go up to 5. And then it just stops at 5 point. Where does it stop? It looks like it's going to keep going, actually. So it's going to keep going further and further over to maybe, I'm thinking like maybe 6. Let's see if it goes further than that. And then you just keep on pushing it and trying to figure out where it goes. So X is now at 200, it's at 5.9. Let's see if it goes over 6. It does go over 6. So based on what I can see right here, it just keeps going. It's going to keep going further and further. So your range is just negative infinity to positive infinity, or all real numbers. Okay, let's go ahead and try the next one, number 4. For number 4, what's the difference here? It's a cube root, but now you have a -3 right there. I just want to make sure you guys see that. So rather than trying to calculate this in my head, because, you know, I don't really want to work that hard, I'm going to go ahead and just graph this. So you go to y equals, you want to type in a -3 first. So put -3. And then you're going to do math. You want to go down to this cube root of 4 and then type in x. And let's hit graph and see what that graph looks like. So I'm curious, like, what is that negative going to do? Now, keep in mind that my format is a little bit weird because remember, I was moving over to 100. So I'm just going to go back to zoom and go down to standard for number 6, and it just resets it. Okay, so the negative is going to make it switch directions. Do you see that? So then what you're going to do is you're just going to draw it like this. Like that. But now I need to fill out my chart, okay? So to fill out my chart, I'm going to go back to my graph and I'm going to do second trace. And we're going to type in -8, which then gives me a 6. What about when it is -1? It gives me a 3. Okay, what about 0, 1, and 8? So do second trace, 0. That's just going to give me a 0. And I'm thinking when it's 1, it's going to be a -6. Or I'm sorry, 1 is going to be a -3. And it is. So 0, -3, -6. Your domain is how far is it going to the right? How far is it going to the left? It's never going to stop. Negative infinity to positive infinity. And then your range, how far is it going to go up? How far is it going to go down? It's going to be very similar to the last one as well. Negative infinity to positive infinity. It never stops. It just keeps getting higher and lower. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the next part of this. So rather than graphing everything and trying to figure out how it moves, there's an equation, okay? So graph of a radical function. Notice that there are several letters. I see a K here, there is an H here, and there is also an A. Those three letters are determined if your graph's going up, down, left, or right. There are two different types of radicals. The first one is just a radical like that, like a radical. And remember that graph, it's like a curve. The second one we talked about is a cube root. And that one, it looks like a weird looking S, like that, okay? So step one is, if you have a positive K, your graph's gonna go up. If it's a negative K, your graph's gonna go down. Also, part of step one is, if you have a negative H, your graph's gonna go to the right. If you have positive H, your graph's gonna go to the left. So make sure you copy that part down. Step two, there are two parts of step two. First one is, if it's a negative A, it's gonna be like this, or with your graph, it's gonna look like, I'm sorry, if it's a positive A, sorry, not negative, positive A, like this. On the other hand, if it's gonna be like a negative A, remember your graph's gonna go opposite like that, and then your other graph is gonna start up and then go down like that. So just kind of like flips, you know what I mean? Like what it does is it basically just allows it to reflect about the X axis, or basically it's just gonna be flipped. Okay, the second part to this is you need to know that if A is bigger than 1, your graph is gonna look skinny. Like instead of having, like, if this is your parent function, okay, so this is your graph like this. What I meant by skinny is that it's gonna look like smaller, like a little bit more compressed. On the other hand, if your A is smaller than 1, your graph is gonna look wider. It's just gonna go wider like that. All right, so let's go ahead and put this into practice, okay? So example 2. So then looking at this right here, rather than graphing this, we now have a set of skills where I basically gave you the formula to figure out how this goes, okay? So -1 means you're gonna go down 1, so that negative means you're gonna go down 1. +4 means you're gonna go to the left 4. That 2 just means it's gonna be a skinnier graph. So let's do that. We're gonna go down 1, left 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's gonna go in this direction like that. Your vertex is where you started, and that's -4, -1. So then when you're looking for the domain in range, your domain is how far does your graph go to the right how far does your graph go to the left? I don't know about you, but like left, my graph starts at -4. So it's gonna be at -4 all the way to positive infinity, because I'm gonna keep going to the right. Range is talking about up and down. Like how far up is my graph gonna go? And how far down is my graph gonna go? I don't know about you, but my graph starts on -1 and it doesn't go any further than that. And then all the way up to positive infinity. All right, let's take a look at B. For B, I noticed that there is a -1, a 2, and a -3, okay? The 1 means I go down 1. The +2 means 2 to the left. That -3 means that it's gonna be like reflected like that way over the x-axis, and it's also gonna be skinny because the A is bigger than 1. So go down 1, left 2, and it's be in this direction, like that. Okay, so now what is my vertex? Where do I start here? That is down at -2, -1. So then my domain, which starts from left to right, is just at -2 to positive infinity. And then my range is going to be, where does it start? Up and down. It starts at -1. And then to not positive infinity, but it's going down. So it's -1 to negative infinity. And then negative infinity needs to be on the left. All right, you guys, let's go on to example 3. For example 3, notice that you're no longer talking about square root, you have cube root. Okay, so for cube root, remember your graph looks like this. It's like a squiggly S symbol. Okay. So then for A, I know that there is a 3, a -3, a 2, and then a -2 right there. So what does that translate to me? What it means is that it's gonna go 2 up, 3 to the right, and then it's gonna be skinny, but then it's gonna be reflected over the x-axis. So let's do that. 2 up, 1, 2, 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3. That's where you're gonna put your dot. And if it's gonna be reflected over the x-axis, it's not gonna be like this way. It's gonna go up like this way and then down like that, right? So then we're gonna draw it, and it's gonna be skinnier, so it's gonna be like this, and then like that. And of course, if you're ever in doubt, you guys, you're welcome to use your calculator to check. But sometimes, plugging all that numbers in, it just takes a long time, and it gets a little bit too much. So it's better if you just know the transformation directions, because it saves you some time. All right, so let's talk about the domain. Domain is left to right. Well, that's easy. It's just negative infinity to positive infinity. It's never going to stop. Range, negative infinity to positive infinity. It's never going to stop. Let's take a look at B. B is the last example we're going to go over today. So I have a -1, +1, and then a +3. So what does that mean to me? -1 means you're going to go down 1. +1 means you're going to go over to the left 1. That 3 means it's just going to be skinny. So I'm going to go down 1, left 1, and it is going to go down first and then up like that. Because it's not a negative, so you're not reflecting it. So you don't flip it. Domain is just negative infinity to positive infinity. Range, negative infinity to positive infinity. And that's it. That's how you do graphing and transformations of radicals, you guys. 2 different graphs. Square roots are always going to be like this little curvy thing. Cube roots, it's going to be like this little squiggly S shape. Okay, those are the only 2 things you need to memorize. Now take a look at your poster that you guys have right there. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is you are going to go over to this page right here. Well, actually, just kidding. Maybe not this page. Just kidding. Actually, yeah. So what I want you guys to do on your poster, and I'm going to change my instructions a little bit, is you are going to create, and you're going to have your poster, and we're going to do it on 2 different sides. So here's your poster. Let me just draw this for you guys. Let's do draw, and let me change that. So I'm here. Great. So here's your poster, right? You're going to put it as a vertical. Okay, you're going to go ahead and put square root. And then on the right side, you're going to put cube root. Square root is going to be like this. Cube root is going to be like this. Okay. And you're essentially going to basically make an equation and then just graph it for me, because you're going to have a graph right here. And you're going to create an equation. So if I were to create an equation, I will put y is equal to, there needs to be a number for the a, so whether it's plus or minus, and then x, and then you're going to have a number for the h, whether it's minus or plus h, whichever one you want. I'm just put minus plus, a is a minus plus, and then a minus plus k. So you guys go ahead and give me the numbers for a, h, and k. And then you essentially just graph it right there. And so you create the square root and you create the cube root. So that is the last part of what I want you guys to do today. You guys have exactly 10 minutes to go ahead and create your equation on your paper. Make sure your name is on it. And then that is it. With your Sharpies. If you need Sharpies, I have them right here. And for those of you guys who are on Zoom, that's all you have to do. And I hope you guys have a great day.